Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in today. I have got a really, really special person on the other end of the internet, all the way from the United States, Kayra Martinez. Now, I've known Kayra Martinez for 3 or 4 years. Is it 4 years now? Because she is the founder of Love Without Borders. And Love Without Borders is a non-profit charity in the USA, and it supports refugees in Athens. The particular thing that she does is that she is an international speaker, selling some of the art that the refugees create, and she speaks all over the world as an advocate for the refugees and to say their messages and to create income that can support the refugees in Athens. So welcome.
Thank you, Susan. It's so good to be here with you and spend a little time discussing this project. I appreciate it.
And the reason why, one of the reasons why I was prompted to invite you on here is that when I did the Ask Susan earlier on in the month, which was about public speaking and presentations, you had some questions for me afterwards, didn't you?
Yes, exactly. This month we had a live event in Stuttgart, Germany, and they had me coming online to speak, as well as Ahmed, who is our project manager in Athens. And so we were down to speak. I was supposed to speak in English, and so was Ahmed. And I have been studying German for since 2005, I believe. And so I have a pretty good grasp of German, but you're never 100% sure. And so I called Susan and I said, what are your thoughts about this? Should I just tell them that we should do my speech in German? And you gave me the best advice.
Oh, good. I'm glad for
Yes.
that.
And that was, yes, absolutely, to speak in German. And yes, so that's what I did.
The thing is that you and I, our native tongue is English, isn't it? And it can
Yes.
be very, very easy for us as English speakers to assume that everybody speaks our language and everybody understands it. But there are a lot of things going on there, aren't there? Because you obviously, with the work that you do when you're working with refugees, they don't necessarily speak English very well, and it's unlikely to be their native tongue.
Yes, so everybody has a different background. Many of the people that I work with that are displaced in Athens, they speak Arabic or Farsi or French, but many of them do have some background in English, so or they have learned during the time that they've been displaced in Greece. So they have a little bit of an English background, but it's perhaps not as strong because when you do speak a second language, obviously, just for me, exactly like this situation when I spoke to the German population, to the community this month, you're always going to make some mistakes, and that's okay. I think the main thing is that we want to be able to show the effort, that we care, that we learn their language, that it's so important, it's beautiful, and to be able to share and to communicate in that language is very powerful.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. There is a real thing about showing respect to other people, even if it is there are a couple of words that you say hello in a foreign language, if you're doing a speech, because you speak internationally to many different audiences. So just to say a phrase in their native tongue really shows respect. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes, absolutely. No matter where I go, I always greet and open the evening or the presentation in their language. And it's just that little extra bit of respect that you show. And I think it really engages people, and it really starts the presentation off in a great way.
So you've spoken in a foreign language in Germany, but also you have a lot of the people that you are supporting who don't speak English as their native tongue. They might not speak it terribly well. They might be still very traumatized by having to leave their native country. What sort of tips would you give for people that are speaking their non-native language?
So I think it's really important to write down some bullet points about what your talk is about. If you're like me, you don't like to write a long text about what you're talking about because it comes from the heart. I want it to be very authentic and to come over just in that way. But the night before, you can write down a few points about what you're going to speak about. And I would also recommend speaking slowly and use your words precisely. So that will help you a lot. And I think one more thing is just to breathe. Breathing is very helpful before, during, after your talk. Those three things I think are just the best points I can advise.
Brilliant tips. Now we've got a comment from Nick Brown. Hi, Nick. Great to see you online. He says, I keep seeing clips of riots and fires in Athens. Police tear gassing the crowd. Is this a regular occurrence? And if so, why?
So I'm not sure which one he's pertaining to, but there have been, because there's many demonstrations. There's a lot of unrest with the university students protesting against the government. There's a lot of protests with refugees. So I'm not sure exactly which one he's talking about, but unfortunately, it is a common occurrence and also not acceptable.
No, I agree with you. Remember, if you've got any questions, mainly related to speaking in different languages, how we can make an impact if we are speaking to people who don't speak English as their native tongue, or how we can support people perhaps in our team or a supplier or a friend whose first language is not English. That would be brilliant. And even if you've got comments, the more we have about this, the more we share our experiences, the better and more informed we can be, and we are being more supportive of other people. Nick Brown says, very sad, and I would agree with him on that. So the other way around is if we are speaking in English to people from a number of different languages. So there might be some English speakers in the audience, but there might be people who do understand English, but it might not be their strongest language. Certainly, excuse me, this is something that I've experienced because I've spoken in different countries in the world, and there are some things that I do specifically. But Kayra, I want to ask you, first of all, what you do, what your strategy is for that.
So, as I mentioned, speaking slowly is very important, and offering your audience a question and answer so that anything that's not understood can be communicated after the presentation. I think that's really important. And just repeating perhaps to confirm what the other person has said.
So I'm sure that there are conversations that you have with some of the refugees that you support where you use that strategy.
Yes, absolutely.
And do you sometimes have translators there just to make sure that nothing is misunderstood or missed?
Yes, when we're meeting a new family or when we are discussing something more important, then I absolutely have a translator there. That way they feel comfortable and they understand clearly what's in the contract or whatever we're discussing is communicated clearly.
So presumably, if you found accommodation for a family, that's a time when you would do that.
Yes, we sit down with them. We write out a contract, and then we have the Arabic speaker go over that one by one in to discuss the entire contract with them, and then they can understand. And if they have any questions at the end, then we encourage them to ask.
Oh, that's brilliant. Certainly, from my point of view, I've trained and spoken at events where there are a lot of people who don't speak English as their native tongue. Like you, I will have a phrase of that native language to greet, and then I will speak in English. I speak slower. I use less sophisticated words without appearing. I'm not being patronizing, but making sure that the language that I use is straightforward,
Mm-hmm.
that the examples I use are straightforward, and in particular, case studies and examples are international, because it's very easy to use an example, perhaps a TV program that we have in the United Kingdom, or something that I know that people in Europe enjoy, like Emily in Paris. Some people, but it might not be universal. So thinking about an example that will translate more easily, that people can understand. So those are some of the things that I do.
Those
I've
are
got
good.
a very, very interesting question from Tamir Makev. Hi, Tamir. And he says, hello to both. Have you worked with Arabic speaking refugees? Yes. If yes, do you find a difference regarding the use of modern standard Arabic versus a dialect? Example, Levantine Arabic with them. I will leave you to answer this one.
Salam alaikum. Yes, absolutely. The majority of the people that I'm helping in Greece are from the Middle East. So the majority of the people that I'm helping are speaking Arabic. It's funny that you asked this question because Susan and I were speaking about this earlier. But the the language that we use mostly is the Syrian dialect. I have a lot of people from Aleppo, and so during the years, the last 6 years, I've actually learned basic Arabic, but it's very colloquial and from this certain area. So if I were to speak to somebody from Yemen, for instance, I might make some big mistakes because it's there's a lot of different words. But I think for the most part, once you speak one language, it's just like with Hochdeutsch, German, um, or the Arabic. You understand that you're not speaking the same exact language, but you have to try to understand and work with each other a little bit. And I think the majority of the times it goes over very well because you both understand the same language. So I do have not such an easy time understanding all of these Arabic languages, but I do my best, and I am studying next month, so hopefully it will get a little bit better as well. Thanks for the
You're amazing.
question.
You're amazing, Kayra. Does that answer your question, Tamir? Do contribute more if you want to add to that. That would be very interesting. Oh, so Nick says, oh, Nick's showing off now. Ich bin ein Berliner.
Oh, very funny.
Kennedy said he was a donut or a type of cheesecake. Sorry, cherry cake. You have to be careful. Yes, and I can think of some examples in French, one or two howlers that I've said over time, which I will share with you privately, Nick,
Okay.
when we next have breakfast.
That's funny.
I've got a question from Laura Cooperman. Now, Laura is a mutual friend of ours, isn't she? And I think that I understand she supports the charity. She said, I just had to communicate with a nanny today who spoke some English but was apologizing over it to me before she started asking her question. I offered Spanish and then spoke in Spanish for the next part of the conversation, which seemed to put her at ease. But then as I started to struggle to put a more complex thought together in Spanish, she answered me back, I understand. Interesting how we tried to make each other comfortable. All this after a 45-minute music class in English.
Hmm.
And she then says, so the question is, it's tricky when you're in a room or Zoom with educated people from all over the place and you're a fast talker because that's got you places in your own country or culture, but might not work in that situation. So do you need to communicate clearly but avoid sounding like you're dumbing down or slowing down to accommodate?
I think regardless of who we're talking with and where we're talking, on which platform, it's so, so important to slow it down. I'm just like you, Laura, because I speak so fast, and I've had many people tell me I just need to slow down. And so I think no matter who you do speak with, it's a very good rule to just slow it down, because then it makes your communication much, much better. And I think I will add one thing is that if you, when you're speaking to somebody that doesn't speak your language, it's also a very nice gesture to just let them know that, you know, you're doing a great job, and you're working with them. I think that'll really put them to ease.
I think that's a lovely thing to do. I got a question from Raquel Ark, who says, how do I get senior management to listen as somebody who is speaking English as my non-native tongue? And that's quite an interesting one, isn't it?
Yes. And can you expound on that a little bit? She wants to get there.
So I hope my clients are mainly in the tech world, but always worried about presenting and public speaking, not only to others where English is the second language, but because they find them that they are speaking in their second language, and that makes them more nervous. So if they are presenting to senior management or people who are decision makers, there's an added pressure on them. How can they make sure that the powers that be, the decision makers, are actually listening to them? And I'm sure Nick will contribute to this. His ears will be burning. He will come up with an idea here as well. So have you got any comments on that, or is this one for me?
I would I would only advise if this is a regular ongoing project that they're continuing um, to have, to perhaps get a coach, and
Yes.
to and that way they can give a little some tips about what can help them, and then they can accomplish great things.
I think that's a really good thing. Practicing, as you said earlier, the idea about having some bullet points beforehand and perhaps practicing with somebody else beforehand. Um, really think about your body language as well, because it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. If you look nervous, if your head's down, or you know your body language is like this and very defensive, people are going to switch off. But
Yes,
if you command the stage and say it with confidence, it's more likely that the senior management or decision makers who are busy are going to take notice of what you say.
very good points. Yes.
So another question, she says, how can I persuade like I can in my own language? In a way, that it's a similar answer, isn't it? About preparation, practice, understanding what you're going to say, and maybe getting an ongoing coach if you know that this is something that's part of your job description. Would
Yes.
you add anything?
Yes, I agree, because I do realize that for instance, with my speaking engagements, I realize it could come over a lot more powerful if I spoke in English. However, what percentage of the German community, for instance, would understand that? So this is why we make the decision to speak in German rather than English. Sometimes it's not all about the 100% being correct and not making any mistakes. It's also about showing respect and
Yeah.
making the effort.
Yeah. I would like to think that anybody in a senior position or in a position where they're a decision maker, that they would bear that in mind, that they would understand that somebody's stepping up and being amazing in their non-native language. Are there any other comments? It'd be great if there are other questions here, because we've got somebody who's here working with people, different languages. I could give my experience, but it's lovely to have somebody else here that can possibly give a slightly different perspective. But before we finish, there might have been people that missed out on the work that you do for Love Without Borders. So could you just share with everybody what you do?
Absolutely. So I'm the founder and executive director of Love Without Borders. It's a nonprofit that's registered in the United States, and we are supporting refugees in Greece, and namely in Athens. And we're doing several different projects. We distribute food vouchers to the refugees, and we have a massive art project that has spanned the world. We've been on 4 continents, and I've spoken at 117 different events around the world. So bringing the art around, advocating on behalf of the refugees, and giving them a voice. And it's just wonderful to see how the power of art is so instrumental in so many people's lives.
Now, I know that there was a question that you asked me about one of your refugees that you support and the fact that you are wanting to give them more of a voice. Did you want to ask that question again so that the viewers can hear it?
Sure. So since 2016, I have been, as I mentioned, traveling around the world, speaking at different venues. However, in the last year or so, I've been very interested in trying to actually have the refugees either come with me when I'm in Europe or perhaps do online talks with universities so that students can learn a little bit more. And so I'm trying to create some sort of a platform where we can get the refugees to speak. And I think I would like to get a little bit of advice on how to initiate that, how to coach the refugees so that they can feel more confident about their stories, because they have so much to share. And I think that their stories are so powerful and very important that people hear directly from them.
Oh, definitely. This is a discussion in itself, isn't it? And I'm sure that one or two of the listeners might have some good advice themselves. Oh, I've lost her. It's just me on my own now. But I don't know what's happened there. That's a bit odd. But first thing that I would say is that it's very, very brave of people if they are sharing a very, very traumatic story, and they need to be ready to share that and to recognize that it is a safe place for them to share the story, that they will not compromise their safety by sharing it. They also need to think about what they want to share, because there might be some things that are very personal to them that they might be very uncomfortable about sharing. And there is a huge thing in public speaking about sharing your story. I always think that there has to be a very clear outcome. Are you sharing a story for the sake of it, or are you sharing the story to show how Love Without Borders finally did support you, and that there was a very good outcome as a result of some terrible things that have happened? And I would always think of the audience first. What are they going to get out of it? Of course, they're going to understand better why there are refugees and why they have moved from their homelands because of some terrible things that have happened to them. And then the audience is going to think, how can I help? How can I help this person who's a human being like me? Oh, now I've got something here, and unfortunately, um, I'm not able to understand VURFYI. I don't know what that is. Could you explain that more? Because unless it's something rude, which I'm not sure, but whoever it is, if you want to explain that more, that would be great. But would you agree with me with that, Kayra?
Yes, I think that's why I've actually delayed this up until now, is because I felt like those stories are so private, and
Yes,
it's not always the best way to put a video in somebody's face when they have
yes,
just lived through a very difficult time.
I would
So
agree.
we're discussing that, but I think those are really good points that you made. Thank you.
And it might be a really powerful catharsis for those refugees when the time is right, but it is when the time is right. And it might never be the right time, or it might be that they feel that they have got a voice and they want to share a small aspect of their story so that other people can understand them.
Yes, we were able to have an online event with one refugee and a university in the United States. And all of the students just came away with a whole nother meaning of a refugee. And they just realized that this could happen to anybody, and
Exactly.
really opened their eyes.
Yes, and that is powerful for humanity, really, isn't it? That we can understand things from other people's perspectives. Um, it's getting the balance, isn't it? And perhaps that's something we can discuss privately.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Now, are there any other questions? Um, I will put a post on LinkedIn and the other platforms afterwards with information on Love Without Borders in case you want to know more information or would like to support the work that Kayra and the foundation are doing. Are there any more questions? So before we finish, do you want to summarize what you do and how language is important with that?
So, as a speaker internationally, I believe that it's really important to um, practice your talks, and it's always a good idea to perhaps get somebody in that language to take a look and make sure that if there's any questions or concerns, that you do it the night before. Also, to repeat anything to your audience if something was not understood. Make sure you use breathing techniques and speak slowly.
Brilliant. I couldn't have summarized it better. Thank you so much, Kayra. It's always an absolute honor to speak with you.
Thank you, Susan. It was great to be here with you as well.
And thank you very much to the audience as well. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.